Okay, welcome to part two, Jimmy Neutron fans. Um, Ed, I believe the next question was for you, if you want to give that a read.
Alright, so next question, Farley Drexel. Have you ever vomited on someone whilst riding an attraction at an amusement park? No. Okay, what do you love most about writing fanfiction? For me, it's, well, I just like writing, in general. I mean, it started, a lot in high school for me. I mean, I wrote ever since I was a little kid, but in high school, it really took on, sort of a new meaning for me. It was almost like a compulsion. Like, I would be, in study hall or something, and then I would be overcome by the desire to write. Like, I had to get it out of me, or else I feel like I would go batty. I started to settle down a little bit afterwards, but then, it's just the kind of thing where, I'm a writer, I'm a storyteller, it's what I love to do, and therefore it is what I do. Fan fiction for me, I can write about characters and universe that I love and that other people love as well, and we can all share this and comment on it. And so fan fiction really is a great way to get some feedback for your writing and to work for a universe that you're excited about. So that's my take.
The thing I love most about writing fan fiction, and like Ed, I actually kind of really started to write in high school. That's actually when I started writing fan fiction, when I went into ninth grade. And what I love most about it is I had a very loving but very overprotective mother, so I didn't really have a very social childhood. And that's why I latched onto Jimmy Neutron. Like, I loved the JC aspect, but I also just loved watching these five kids, like, walking around town, having adventures, kind of growing together as a family. And by writing fan fiction for the show, I kind of got to explore the childhood I never had, like, in 100 different ways. I got to show characters interacting in all these different ways and growing closer, and I like writing fan fiction because I like showing the characters I love getting together in ways you couldn't see it on the show. That's what I love.
Yeah, I think that's what it really is, when it comes to what you like about the show. It's the characters. Like, the stuff you like about the most is, it doesn't seem obvious at first, but when you think about it, what you like most is them just, sitting at the candy bar, for instance, and just, hanging out, just talking and being themselves. Like, scenes like that, I find are, the closest to my heart.
Yeah.
And that's the good stuff.
I absolutely agree, and I find that's true for any show, not just Jimmy Neutron. I love South Park, and that is, absolutely that is not a relationship-heavy show. That is not a touchy-feely show, but some of my favorite scenes are just the kids in that show being kids, like hanging out and talking and having a funny conversation. And that's what I love about Jimmy Neutron, when they're in the candy bar, when they're hanging out in Jimmy's lab talking, stuff like that.
Yeah, they're just being themselves.
Yeah.
That's what we like about them.
And, those are some of my favorite scenes whenever I read on fan fiction, like reviews for my work, for Ed's work, for other stuff. People always say, like, oh, my favorite scene was when they were in the candy bar. You did that really well. When they were talking in school. I loved it when he wrote that scene that way. So, and I don't think anyone turned into Jimmy Neutron to see what crazy adventure they would get in. They turned in to see what the characters would do that week and how they would interact.
Definitely. Best fan fiction is giving just a slice of the show, really, I think, to help best recreate that atmosphere and feeling. So should we move on to the next question?
Yeah, we got two more questions here. What are your favorite Jimmy Neutron fanfic stories by authors not including yourself? So, Ed, I'll let you answer that one first.
All right, well, I think one of my favorite authors, and this includes a lot of stories that I read, would be Gary Snyder. His pen name, I think, is GADS 2000. And, he wrote, what did he write? He wrote Eye of the Llama. That's one of his later ones. He wrote, the reality, ultimate reality extrapolator.
It was
Day,
the Truman
Darkest
Show.
Night.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was among my favorites. And a lot of stuff, just to give a short answer. And what I like so much about him is that it seemed like he took all the elements of the show. Like, he made his stories like the show, but I thought he made them even better. He injected, a lot of really cool science and cool ideas into it. He had the characters grow. There's a little bit of continuity in these stories. His characters continue to grow. They had some serious scenes and stuff like that. And just everything. He was hilarious. He had the characters' dialogues and personalities down perfect. and his books just felt like an adventure. I would just read them, and it would be a fun ride.
Yeah, this is going to be kind of a long answer for me because when the Jimmy Neutron fanfiction stories are good, they're really good. And definitely Gary Snyder. I started reading his stuff kind of, I think, right before I started writing Pushing Through. It took me a long time to actually find his stories and read them, but I was blown away. Like, it was literally like watching a show down to like the tiniest detail, and it seemed like if I was watching this, like each story would actually take like 22 minutes too, like down to like how long the events took place. Like, it seemed like he was writing for a show. That was perfect. I can't recommend that stuff enough, especially in, I think the title was in Brightest Day and
Right, Darkest Night. There was that, and there's also The Devil Returns
The
to
Devil.
Retroville. That was like the second one.
Yeah,
those two books, especially the latter one, I think.
Yeah.
Like with Lou Cipher is his name.
Yeah, I like
and
that.
it's just great stuff.
Yeah, the superhero one, the In Brightest Day, Darkest Night, you know what it is. You'll look it up. And the Devil Returns to Retroville. Both of those were just really funny and really heartfelt and poignant at the end in ways I wasn't expecting.
Those are some of the best stories on fanfiction.net, bar none.
And I've only read one story from him, but Soulful Sin. He is another really great Jimmy Neutron author. He wrote a one-shot called The Catalyst.
I think Soulful Sin might be a she. I'm not quite sure.
Well, his profile pic is a guy. It's a cartoon of a guy, so maybe it's a girl.
Maybe, who knows?
But this misandrogynous person is really incredible. The Catalyst. It's a one shot about Jimmy kind of realizing that he's too smart for his friends, and he kind of just becomes a real jerk over the course of this one shot, and it's really heartbreaking watching him like lose all his relationships.
So I didn't read Catalyst, but I think I read one story by Soulful Sin. Who might be a boy, pardon me if I'm wrong, but I remember I communicated with them a little bit, and yeah, I thought like their prose seemed really good. I thought they seemed like a pretty good writer from what I remember, so.
And we can't not mention Link Lover 77, who she's a newcomer to the JN fandom and did some absolutely wonderful work. I met her when she started to review all of my stories in order. And then I started to read her stories, and I was blown away. They were really good. The Unwelcome House Guest, about Jimmy and Cindy Cindy has to sleep over at Jimmy's for a weekend. There's a lot of really funny scenes in that, and really sad ones too. And then she wrote Losing Control, a one-shot from Libby's perspective. And that was another really heartbreaking one to read.
Yeah, I thought with the, I started communicating with Link Lover too. And I thought with the Unwelcome House Guest, just keep reading it. To me, it like kind of snuck up on me. Like at first, it seems like it's well written and stuff like that. But as you keep going through it, it really will start to, impress and move you. So for those of you who haven't read it, or maybe who started it but haven't finished it, keep going. You'll like it. And
hypothetically, if me and Ed were working on some sort of convoluted plot to revive Jimmy Neutron, and we had to include another person, it would be Link Lover, hypothetically.
Yeah, probably.
Probably, like 80%.
Hypothetically.
So why don't we move on to the last question we received, which is... give us 1 second here. Okay. Have you ever looked back at your old writing and thought, that sucks? Yes. I would say pretty much all of my old stories prior to Stealing My Heart kind of sucked. They had good moments, good ideas, but the execution was lacking. Especially Revenge. If you haven't read Revenge, don't read Revenge. That was my biggest regret as an author. When I started writing, I wrote a lot of action-adventure stories, and I always said the biggest problem with action-adventure stories is you don't have a real sense of danger. You don't think that characters could really die at any moment. And I solved that by pretty much killing everyone left and right, and that was way overboard in the other direction. It took me until the final battle to find that balance between balancing the threat of death with actual death. So, yes, I have looked back at my stuff and thought it's horrible.
Yeah, Definitely I have to, say yes to that question too. I think I wrote like some of my first fics when I was 14, and I still have some scrawled out on notebooks, here and there, and they're just horrible. I mean, like, the characters aren't really in character. I got like right to like mushy scenes right away, with like no build up, and I mean, even stuff I write recently, I have to say, sometimes like I'll write something and I'll like it, but then I'll look at it, a couple of days later, and then I'll be like, this is horrible, I hate it, I want it to die. Usually I get over that, but definitely there's a lot of love and hate when it comes to writing. I think that's just something you have to live with.
And I actually, I don't agree with Ed about him sucking, but I do agree that like recently when I was writing Pushing Through, there were a couple chapters where I think, especially chapter 8, the one where Jimmy and Barak are alone in the lab, I spent about 4 hours in my computer writing it out, and like it just was poop. The entire like thing. I after 4 hours I looked it over and I'm like, this is not making any sense. This day was a waste. I almost like threw my computer across the room. It was horrible. But I came back the next day and I ended up really liking my new version of the chapter. So you're always going to end up writing bad stuff as a writer.
And that's what it is about writing. I mean, you just got to keep writing, and you got to recognize the good stuff when it comes out of you, and latch onto it, and rewrite and try and make it perfect.
And another thing, I think, I know a lot of people in reviews, they say like, oh, you are awesome, my stuff sucks, I wish I could be like you. And I'm not saying I'm the best by any means, but everyone starts out like with not good stories. Like my first 20 stories sucked. So if you write a story, if it's your first story and you're not happy with it, that's normal.
Yeah, it's just part of development. I think they say you have to write something like 1 million words, before you start getting to, to where you're supposed to be. And when you think about it, 1 million's a lot. I don't think I've even written 1 million, nowhere close to that.
I know Jimmy Newton, I know fan fiction stuff. I think it says 500,000 words for me, and I wasn't happy with my stuff until the 300,000 word mark. And I'm sure I wrote stuff before I started fan fiction too. So it does take a lot of work to learn to be happy with your stuff.
That's what it is. You have to set your bar high, and you just have to keep trying, and sooner or later you'll get better.
Just push through the hard times.
Yes, and when you reach that final battle, you will do well and succeed. Of course, it won't be the final battle, there'll be more after that, but you know what I'm saying.
So that's it for the questions, but we're not quite done yet. We also figured we'd just kind of share some thoughts with you. I know I wanted to talk about the last few chapters of the Lost Chapters, and I do again apologize for the very long hiatus. There's another project I've been working on. I can't go into the details, but I would love to. But I will just say that for the last chapters of the Lost Chapters, I think they're going to be some of the best. You're going to get to see Nick and Jimmy hanging out at Nick's little cousin's birthday party. You're going to get to see them hanging out and interacting again in between the two books. And the two of them are really going to learn how different they are from other kids that haven't, risked their lives to save their parents and fight aliens. They're going to learn how different they are. You're going to get to see Betty's recruitment by Nick in Pushing Through in like chapter 8 or 9. When Betty shows up at the lab, you're going to get to see why she agreed to come on this journey. You're going to get to see a little bit more of her relationship with Nick. You're going to get to see Cindy finally talk to her mother and explain that she and Jimmy are a couple. So you're going to get to finally see some interaction between Cindy and her mother in my stories. And in the last chapter, it's going to focus on all of the surviving kids at the Halloween dance. And it's going to take place about 2 or 3 weeks after the end of Pushing Through. And you're pretty much going to see how they're learning to move past what they've been through and how close they still are as a group. So I'm very excited to write those last 4 chapters.
Yeah, for Make a Move, I don't exactly have a chapter-by-chapter plan, but I do still have plans for Jimmy to go through a few more of his ideas to try and get Cindy. Maybe we're about halfway through right now, maybe a little bit less than that. So Jimmy's going to try out some more things. He may try cooking for Cindy and seeing how that goes. That might be one thing he'll do. you might see Cindy do something you won't expect. I won't give more details on that, but there's a possibility of that. There will be more Francis. Probably not too much because I don't want to overdo him, but definitely expect him to show up. And there might be a fight at the end of the story.
Is there going to be, and I'm not being coy, I don't know, is there going to be a return of the sewer rats? Because I know those were some of my favorite characters in that story.
The sewer rats probably will make a return. I do have some ideas for how they're going to show up.
I think the biggest mystery we have in that story is why are these sewer rats so obsessed with Francis that they pop out of the sewer and seek him out at a movie theater and drag him back into the sewer?
I do have sort of an answer for that. Maybe not for why they're obsessed with him in particular, but there is a reason that they did want to drag him back into the sewer. Believe it or not, I actually have thought that through.
I didn't know he did. I was just asking. That's funny.
So yes, there will be some sort of explanation about that.
There are a couple other things I wanted to bring up. One of the questions we didn't get, but we thought we would like to answer is, what is our favorite scene? Not story or even chapter, but just favorite scene, contained moment that we've written. My personal favorite scene that I wrote would probably have to be Jimmy's breakdown at the end of pushing through when he gives his plea to Yocus. When they've just set the Flaming Justice to be blown up, and he realizes that he doesn't want to continue this war, he doesn't want to kill people, he wants to risk it all for a chance of peace. I love it because he's a kid, and he references that. He says, we're just children, you're making us do these horrible things, you killed my friend Miranda and Barak, but I'm still going to take a chance and try to work this out peacefully instead of killing millions of you. And that was one that I knew from the very beginning of the story I had to word just perfectly and get it just right. And it was probably my favorite to write and most satisfying to write because it just showed, over 200,000 words, it summed up everything that Jimmy had been through in those books. And it showed that all the mistakes he's made, killing Gubat, killing Eustace, he's learned from that and he's moving past it, and he's trying to become a better person for it. So that was my favorite scene in my work.
Yeah, my favorite scene, try not to sound egotistical when I do this, but my favorite scene probably is the ending of The Longest Night. That last chapter for me was like one of the hardest things I had to write because it just wouldn't come out of me. Like I had, mental block, and like it took an hour just to write like one line. But the scene I like is where Jimmy's about to take off on the rocket. He's about to go off. Cindy might not know how long she's going to see him. And he tells her that, he would be open to the idea of staying on Earth. And you can see that, she kind of wants to do this. She wants to give in to this desire, but she doesn't. She tells him that she won't do it. And she even prevents him from doing it, even if he wanted to, because she tells him that, if he stays, that she will desert him. She will leave him, and she will not let them be together. And so to me, I don't know, I don't know if that's quite realistic, but I just thought it was a good way of, I liked it. I thought it was a good way of going about it. And I don't know, it just seemed really emotional and poignant. That's the kind of stuff I like when I see other stuff, and it's the kind of thing that I hopefully try to produce in my own story.
I cried when I read it. I'm not joking, I really did. It's kind of pathetic, but I cried. If you read my review of that chapter, I was just yelling at him saying, why did you make me cry? Because it was really sad. Like, everything about it was just so sad. And you kept giving us hope. You kept saying, like, oh, we can do this. We can stay on Earth and form our own intergalactic missionaries. And I was like, you could. It's a happy ending. And then she's like, no. And I'm like, why? And then the tears fell. So...
yeah, well, that's a good thing. If I can make people cry, not to sound mean about it, but I think I've done my job. That's probably one of my favorite things to hear when people tell me that, I made them cry because it means that I've done my job. So it makes me happy.
I love it when I make people cry. Best when my girlfriend read one of my works, she said I made her cry. I was ecstatic for days. I wish I could make her cry all the time. And Keith Alcorn, one of the creators of Jimmy Neutron, read The Longest Night, and he liked it.
Yeah, I really don't know what else to say about that other than that I'm really happy and humbled, and yeah, I really don't have any other words to add to that.
Is there anything else you'd like to discuss about our stories, Ed? Or
I don't know if we have anything else about our stories. I think we've covered enough. The only other thing we have to discuss. Let's see. Oh, wait, I know. Where is El Chupacabra? Do you know, Ryan?
Yeah, I know.
He knows.
I'll let you explain that one.
I know as well. Well, you're probably wondering, where is El Chupacabra? We said it'd be Quietthinker, Farley Drexel, and El Chupacabra. Well, the answer is quite simple. I am El Chupacabra. And that's all there is to it.
When I found out that, I was like, this is like the Matrix in here. Like, I was like, whoa. It blew me away.
It was pretty funny. I don't know how many people remember me from back in the old days, but I was writing from around 2004, 2006, I think. Under that name, I had written one story called When Nerdtron came to Retroville. It was about how Jimmy moved to Retroville originally and how Cindy dealt with that. Another thing I wrote is called The Vortex Analysis. It was like Jimmy kind of analyzing Cindy, trying to, him sort of coming to terms with his feelings a little bit for her. I think probably the only other notable thing I wrote would have been My Favorite Pen Pal. It's like where Cindy and Jimmy are basically writing letters back to each other. And, because Jimmy's like away, and so they're writing letters to each other, and, they start having some commiseration, and at the end they finally meet. Jimmy returns to Earth, and so yeah, I've been actually writing stuff for a while, not just 2 stories, but.
And I must have only been about 13 or so when I was reading those El Chupacabra stories. I don't remember any of the titles, but I remember him talking about them now, the synopses, and those were all really good stories. I love the Pen Pal one, and there was another one where Jimmy went off to fight the Yokians on his own.
Yes, that was Into the Depths. That was the sequel to When Nerdtron Came to Retroville. So yeah, I mean, I think if I were to upload those stories again, they probably wouldn't be as, I don't know, I think if Ryan read them again, he probably wouldn't think they're as good as he thought they were.
I remember them being very well written, and
But I was a younger writer. I think, hopefully, I've matured since then, and yeah, but I think they're okay. I think I can say that they were decent.
So the other thing we have to discuss is astute readers may have noticed that my story, Ed's story, and Link Lover 77's story, they all went on hiatus at approximately the same time. Any comments on that, Ed?
That is kind of suspicious, isn't it, Ryan?
We love being coy, and the truth is there is something going on with the three of us.
Yes, there is.
And we literally can't divulge all the details. It would put the project at jeopardy, I think we can say that. But what we can say is that this would definitely be the biggest project we've ever worked on.
Yes, it's something a little bit more than fanfiction.
Yes, it's definitely more than a fan fiction story, and if it works out, you'll all be extraordinarily happy.
Yes, you will.
So, I think we can say that, and that is the reason why we haven't been updating.
Yes.
But again, we will be updating our stories. I actually plan on finishing the lost chapters. I plan on uploading the next chapter, hopefully within 2 or 3 weeks, definitely by November 1st at the latest. I am in vet school. It is very busy, and but I do hope to, get the next chapters uploaded on a weekend when I have some time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working around the clock, like 70 hours a week. So for me, like with Ryan, it's difficult for me to, find the time to do this, especially since we're working on our other project, as we've mentioned. And I have some other things I need to start thinking about as well. But I will hopefully get it sometime soon. I don't really know when, but it shouldn't take too long. I should be able to pick up where I left off. And
yeah, we're not
we're
not the type to leave our stories unfinished forever. They're a big part of us, and we wouldn't just leave it like that.
Yes. it's very important for us to finish what we started.
Especially
take seriously.
Especially for me with this is a series that's about 250,000 words in, so it would be pretty weird to just leave the last 20,000 words out. That would be kind of messed up. I'd punch me if I was an audience member. So we want to thank you guys for sending in the questions and for watching this.
Yeah, we love you guys for watching us, for reading our stories, for reviewing us, for favoriting, for following us, all those kinds of things. They really, really mean a lot.
We all love the show. We love writing for it, and we love knowing that you guys love the stuff we write too.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's pretty much it, and we look forward to hearing from you guys again.
All right. We'll see you guys later.
See ya.